The light of the body is the eye. If therefore thine eye be single, or sound, or clear, thy whole body shall be full of light. Matthew 6:22. The definition of the word translated for single in the King James Version, properly folded together, or figuratively clear. If your eye is working correctly, doing what it is designed to do, and being used for what it is designed to allow, then your brain will receive ample information about the world around you to aid you in your living and survival. Sight is an important thing. What is the eye designed for? You say, well, seeing, of course. Yes, and what is seeing? Well, light bounces off objects, revealing their shape and relative color response, and that enters the eye and is sensed on the retina at the back of the eye. The light stimulates nerves, and a message of its recorded form is passed on to the brain, which interprets the signal into a mental image that the conscious and unconscious aspects of the mind record. These records you may consciously study, ponder, and remember, or you may subconsciously store. But with these signals, stimulated by light which is perceived by the mind, come thoughts and impressions. The eye is perhaps the most important of those external senses which are basic to man's awareness of the world around him. Our eyes are more developed than our ears or smell when you compare us to other creatures. We are quite sight-dependent. Take a dog, for instance. He prefers to smell you rather than see you. He may trust his sense of smell more than his sight. If you had to choose to lose two of these three senses, sight, hearing, and smell, which one would you choose to hold on to? What color is a red apple when there is absolutely no light? You may say it is red, but you just cannot see the color. Well, actually, what you are seeing when you see a red apple is bouncing rays of light in the red spectrum. The other rays, like blue for example, are absorbed by the apple's surface. There is no color without light, in other words, for reflected light is the thing you are seeing when you see color. Jesus plainly points mankind to see how valuable a thing is sight and how important a thing is visible light. Now, obviously, Jesus had a much deeper lesson in mind. Many people hope that Jesus was just a good man. Others hope he was a madman. Yet still others hope he was just one of many men inspired by the God they choose to believe in. And still others think he was a God presence that is in all men and all things. But the guards who went to arrest him said something profound and disturbing to many. Never a man spoke like this man. The whole reason they were going to arrest him is that his words contradicted the words that men had been speaking about God for millennia. Another report says he spoke as one having authority and not as the scribes and Pharisees. It sounded like he knew exactly what he was talking about. He was speaking first-hand and not second-hand like all other religious leaders. He told his disciples, "If you have seen me, you have seen the Father." You may or may not believe that he was the unique Son of God, come to mankind to reveal the Eternal One to temporal and mortal beings. But allow his own words to speak for a moment so that you can make your decision based on evidence rather than the whim of feeling. Jesus said that he was the light of the world. When an old man in the temple of Jerusalem set his eyes on the infant Jesus, having never met him or his parents, he uttered a prophetic message that all mankind can now read and hear. He said that this baby was the one sent from God to be the glory of Israel and a light to the Gentiles. He referenced the Old Testament prophecies of the Bible, which spoke of this light coming to all men. Said Simeon, "Lord, now lettest thou thy servant depart in peace according to thy word. For mine eyes have seen thy salvation, which thou hast prepared before the face of all people, a light to lighten the Gentiles, and the glory of thy people Israel." The Old Testament prophet Isaiah, writing hundreds of years before Jesus' advent, said, "Arise, shine, for thy light is come, and the glory of the Lord is risen upon thee. For behold, the darkness shall cover the earth, and gross darkness the people. But the Lord shall arise upon thee, and his glory shall be seen upon thee. And the Gentiles shall come to thy light, and the kings to the brightness of thy rising." It is interesting that the human eye cannot create its own light. It is useless in total darkness. It is dependent on something outside of itself in order to be of any use. It even needs light in order to develop and keep useful. It will practically cease to operate as it should without exposure to light. The Apostle John, speaking of one who was made human, the Word, and whom we now know as Jesus, says a very interesting thing about him. In him was life, and the life was the light of men, or of mankind. He notes that he was with the Father before any creation existed. John chapter 1, verses 1 through 4. In John chapter 8, verse 12, we read, Then spake Jesus again unto them, saying, I am the light of the world. He that followeth me shall not walk in darkness, but shall have the light of life. John chapter 1, verse 9 says, Young's literal translation, He was the true light, which doth enlighten every man coming into the world. One author states, And while Christ opens heaven to man, the life which he imparts opens the heart of man to heaven. Sin not only shuts us away from God, but destroys in the human soul both the desire and the capacity for knowing him. All this work of evil it is Christ's mission to undo. The faculties of the soul paralyzed by sin, the darkened mind, the perverted will, he has power to invigorate and to restore. He opens to us the riches of the universe, and by him the power to discern and to appropriate these treasures is imparted. Christ is the light which lighteth every man that cometh into the world. John 1:9. As through Christ every human being has life, so also through him every soul receives some ray of divine light, not only intellectual, but spiritual power, a perception of right, a desire for goodness exists in every heart. But against these principles there is struggling an antagonistic power. The result of the eating of the tree of knowledge of good and evil is manifest in every man's experience. There is in his nature a bent to evil, a force which, unaided, he cannot resist. To withstand this force, to attain that ideal which in his inmost soul he accepts as alone worthy, he can find help in but one power. That power is Christ. Cooperation with that power is man's greatest need. In all educational effort, should not this cooperation be the highest aim? The book Education, page 29. In 2 Corinthians 4:6 we read, For God, who commanded the light to shine out of darkness, hath shined in our hearts, to give the light of the knowledge of the glory of God in the face of Jesus Christ. But we have this treasure in earthen vessels, that the excellency of the power may be of God and not of us. So the light shines from the character and face of Jesus Christ. For how long has Christ been this light to man? John chapter 1, verse 10, He was in the world, and the world was made by him, and the world knew him not. He came unto his own, and his own received him not. In 1 Peter 1:20 we read of Jesus that he was verily foreordained before the foundation of the world, but was manifest in these last times for you. And in Revelation 13:8 we read, And all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him, whose names are not written in the book of life of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. In 1 Peter 1:10 we read, Of which salvation the prophets have inquired and searched diligently, who prophesied of the grace that should come unto you. Verse 11, Searching what manner of time the Spirit of Christ which was in them did signify, when it testified beforehand the sufferings of Christ and the glory that should follow. The Son of God has been working upon men's hearts since the very beginning. John 1:12 says, But as many as received him, to them gave he power to become the sons of God, even to them that believe on his name. Verse 13, Which were born not of blood, nor of the will of the flesh, nor of the will of man, but of God. And the Word was made flesh and dwelt among us, and we beheld his glory, the glory as of the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth. If Jesus is the light which he speaks of,